It's about time, man, because I'm ready to go home. I'm ready to get the kingdom. I'm ready to live. I'm ready to breathe fresh. I'm ready to have beautiful, pure women. Okay, not no strawberry hollers on this side. Ready to have children, man. You can vibe with. Okay, be around brothers. Be around the Lord Himself. Okay, I'm ready to go and visit places in the galaxy that we didn't know exist. All right, I'm ready to walk on sandy beaches, man, and explore the ocean floors. I'm ready to fly. Okay, I'm ready to eat real food. Okay, I'm ready to drive a chariot, man. All right, I'm ready to minister to the Lord and to be ministered to, man. Okay, I'm ready to worship Yahweh Shem Yahushua in its full entirety. Okay, I'm ready for it. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready, man. I'm ready to see angels and greet angels.
Isaiah 14. For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land. And the stranger shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them, and bring them to their place. And the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. And it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow, and from thy fear, and from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve.
The Lord said that on the Heavenly Father's right hand there are pleasures evermore. And it says that I have not seen neither ear heard the things which the Lord hath prepared for them that wait for Him. You know, there's a whole another world of greatness that awaits us when the kingdom of heaven is established. It's not seen in this society. In this society, we only see carnal things that reason offers in this society. But when the kingdom is established, the Lord is going to open us up to a whole nother world, you know, of pleasure, of knowledge, of wisdom, understanding, you know, it can't even be put into words, you know, because our imagination only goes but so far.
But as it is written, eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither hath entered into the heart of man the things which God hath prepared for them that love Him. But God hath revealed them unto us by His Spirit.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, we would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Kakadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers. And peace and blessings, salutations to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word and truth. And this sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful lake, the believers, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bahashem Yahushua. All right, now what we want to get into today, you know, is understanding, you know, the bottomless pit. You know, and that's in the book of Revelation, the 20th chapter. And, you know, there's so many, you know, false doctrines, you know, going that have been, you know, spread, you know, so many misinterpretations of the scripture when you go into Revelation 20 chapter verses 1 through 3. You know, people, you know, confuse that with, you know, hell, you know, the underworld. You know, people have, you know, the thing that Satan gonna be bound, you know, in the actual pit for 1,000 years, and you know he's gonna return in the kingdom, and all these mad house, you know, doctrines, you know, that surrounds, you know, the bottomless pit. So we're going to get an understanding of it and put it in the right context, you know, concerning, you know, the scriptures, the prophecy, you know, that we read about, you know, in Revelation 20th chapter, you know, and we are able to do these things because the Lord, you know, has sent down, you know, His Holy Spirit on particular men to understand, you know, the mysteries of the scriptures and explain these things and make them plain, all right, for the believers, for the church, okay, so we can have a thorough understanding, all right, of prophecy, man, you know, and that's the spirit of Yahweh Shai is what the spirit of prophecy, okay, so the men, all right, of Yahweh Shai will have their spirit of prophecy to go into these things and thoroughly, break them down. All right, so we can start off here, bro.
Con, is that First John?
Yeah, First John.
Okay, con, throw out, bro. First John chapter 2, verse 20, it says, "But ye have an unction from the Holy One, and ye know all things."
Yeah, so we have an unction, which means pretty much an anointing. So the spirit, there's particular men whom the spirit has anointed. All right, the men that was predestined, to be prophets, like the scriptures say. The spirit of the prophet is subject to the prophets, man. All right, so you have particular men that was anointed, okay, from the Holy One to understand all these things concerning the truth of the Bible. Okay, we don't know all random information in the world, but when it comes to the truth concerning the Bible, we know, all things. All right, and you can jump here, Amos 3:7.
Con, this book of Amos chapter 3 and verse 7. Surely the Lord Yahweh Shema power will do nothing before he reveals his secrets unto his servants, the prophets.
Yeah, but he revealed his secrets unto the servants, the prophets. Okay, and that's the point. The Lord has revealed, these secrets in the latter days to his servants, the prophets, man. And this is what we've been tasked to do. To thoroughly go through these things and make it plain, as the scriptures say, to the church, to the believers, man. Okay, clear up all confusion, because the scriptures say that the Most High is not the author of confusion. All right, now we're gonna go to this precept, all right, this chapter in the book of Revelation, and we're gonna get some information, and Lord will, is edifying. All right, I got a quick little video to go with as well. But so let's go here now. The name of this chapter is Satan Bound. Okay, and it's not speaking of, all right, the spiritual demon Satan, all right, himself. It's talking about his physical counterpart on the earth, in which we're going to prove that it's talking about the people in the earth. Okay, now you can go ahead and read that, bro.
Con, this is the book of Revelation chapter 20 and verse 1. It says, "And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand."
Yeah, so this angel, speaking of Yahweh Shai, which Yahweh Shai has the authority to put nations in captivity and release nations from captivity. Okay, and at this time frame, all right, this is speaking of the bottomless pit, which is Europe. Okay, and Esau, all right, will be placed in this bottomless pit, and mainly Eastern Europe. Okay, over there in Georgia, Caucasus Mountain region. Ukraine. Because Esau even called himself Caucasians to this day. But it goes back to their region. Matter of fact, let's pull up a map. All right. Um, region of, let me see, just to go into their region, because it's more of a of Eastern Europe. Okay, close to Russia. Which is, all right, will be modern day Georgia. Even parts of Ukraine. Okay, the Caucasus Mountain. All right. So let's see. I'll pull up a good map real quick. Mountains. So let's see if you give us a good map, brother. So this might be the best one. Let's see. Should have looked it up before. All right, let me share it real quick. Yeah, so just to give a visual to it, you go here, you have what you call the Greater Caucasus. You have Georgia. Esau is pretty much pushed into this region of the earth. Okay, let's see. You go here because today, all right, you look at it now. It'd be Ukraine. all right, close to northern Ukraine, north of Ukraine. Okay, and that's the region of the earth, that the devil, was pushed into. All right, but you just see that region over here by the Black Sea. Okay, so the devil was pushed into this region. Okay, and he was sealed off. He wasn't able to have authority in the earth. He wasn't able to uh, have influence. Okay, when it came to, the rulership of the earth. He was sealed. So you go back to it, verse 2, you read it.
Come, verse 2. It says, and he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years.
And so for 1,000 years, this devil, there was nothing he could do to put himself back in power. Okay, when that uh, Western Roman Empire fell, all right, because you still had the Eastern Roman Empire, which was ruled by Jake, but when Western Rome fell, okay, this devil, was uh, uh had no sway in the earth, man. You know, he was just, at most he was a proxy. He was used as a proxy between, the wars between the Byzantine Empire and, you had uh, the Parthians, which was Elam. Okay, you had, the Mongolian, empire, doing their thing for a while in their region, over there in Eastern Asia. Okay, you had even Ishmael had his few caliphates, had his little regions that he was, conquering. But Esau wasn't on the scene. He wasn't a factor when all these things was going on. Okay, so for that 1,000 years, he was put on the sideline. All right, and it said laid hold on that dragon, the Roman Empire, that old serpent, going back to the garden, which is the devil, the deceiver, Satan, Shaitan, the adversary. Is speaking of Esau, because who represents Satan in the earth, man? Okay, let's go here to prove that. Who's a representative of Satan in the earth? Just as we're the representatives of Yahweh Bashim al Shah on the right hand side, where Esau is a representative of Satan in the earth. Okay, now let's read this in 2 Thessalonians 2:7, and the point will be in verse 9.
Come, this book of second. Go ahead, bro.
No, you got it.
All right, come, so lot. This is the book of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, starting at verse 7. It says, "For the mystery of iniquity doeth already work.
Yep.
Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way."
Yeah, so the mystery of iniquity, all right, though far already worked. And this was written during the time of pagan Rome when Esau was in rulership. Okay, I believe Nero was in power. All right, at this time when this was written. Okay, so as the Apostle Paul, he is stating the mystery of iniquity, though far already worked, because it was a mystery. All right, he was speaking of Esau, Edom. Okay, and it said he will be taken out of the way. It said only he who now let it will let until he be taken out of the way. So the Lord was allowing, pagan Rome to flourish, which this during the time what they call Pax Romana, okay, the peak of the Roman Empire, and then eventually Rome fell. All right, even Rome fell. Okay, and he was taken into the Bottomless Pit. All right, which is a region, of Eastern Europe. Okay, now uh read verse 8. Yep.
Come, verse 8, it says, "And then shall the wicked be revealed, whom Yahweh Shema Shah shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming."
So it said the wicked. That wicked is a capital W. So this is the wicked. Okay. So now it says, "And then shall the wicked be revealed." So now we have to link a nation to being the wicked. Okay. So you go here to Malachi. All right, 1 and 4. Get straight to the point. All right. So let's go here to Malachi, and it's gonna put a name on the wicked. Go ahead.
Come, this is Malachi chapter 4, verse 1. Whereas Edom says, we are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places. Thus saith
Yeah, so
Yahweh.
they was impoverished. Okay, then what they call the dark ages when Esau was in, he was sidelined in the bottomless pit. Okay, which is the region of the earth, the west, the Eastern Europe. Okay, so this one he was impoverished because he went from all this pomp and glory, as pagan Rome, all right, to being impoverished, okay, and moved into a region bearing the resources, man. Okay, go ahead.
Come. It says, thus saith the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down. They shall Salaki, and they shall call them the border of wickedness, and the people against whom the Lord Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai hath indignation forever.
Yeah, so it linked Esau, Edom, to being what the border of wickedness, man. Okay, so when scriptures speak about the wicked, it's speaking about Esau, Edom. Okay, because as he was impoverished, but he has returned and built during the Renaissance period, the rebirth. But now we're in a time where the Lord is going to throw down. Okay, he said the people against whom the Lord have indignation forever. All right. Now, who did the Lord say he will have war with from generation to generation? We're gonna get that. But let's read this. All right, in the let's read this in the NLT, and then we're gonna get that because who did the Lord say he was gonna have war with from generation to generation? Okay, and who did the Lord say he was gonna give the earth to? Okay, so he linked Esau up with being uh the wicked. Uh, I want to show real quick because in the NLT. All right, yeah, read that in NLT, Robert Shaw.
Con, this is that Malachi chapter 1, verse 4 in the NLT. Esau's descendants in Edom may say, we have been shattered, but we will rebuild the ruins. But yet the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai of the heavens army replies, they may try to rebuild, but I will demolish them again. Their country will be known as the land of wickedness, and their people shall be called the people whom the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai is forever angry.
Yeah, so the people whom the Lord is forever angry. So as the scripture spoke about, all right, Satan, okay, that wicked, okay, being revealed. You see, and it links who was being the wicked, Esau, Edom. And the Lord said he will have indignation with this man from generation to generation. Well, who does the Lord say he's going to have war with from generation to generation? Because it just said he's going to be angry at Edom forever. Okay. Well, who does the Lord say he's going to have war with? All right, from generation to generation. Read that, verse 16.
Con, this is the book of Exodus, chapter 17, verse 16. For he said, because the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai has sworn that Yahweh Shema Shai will have war with Amalek from generation to generation.
Yeah, so the Lord sworn, all right, that he will have a war with Amalek from generation to generation. So let's see who is Amalek. Okay. the usual suspect. All right. Because in the Hebrew it's uh Amala Ama Amalak. All right. Amalak. All right. So you go here, it says son of Ephaz by his concubine Timah, grandson of Esau. Okay, grandson of Esau and progenitor of a tribe, people in southern Canaan, descendants of Amalek, man. All right, or dwell in the valley, because Esau's a low people, man. You know, valley represents the low, death, shadow, you know. You see, so now we're seeing who the scriptures are speaking of when it's speaking of Satan being bound, okay? Because it spoke about what? Okay, their wicked shall be revealed. Okay, so this Satan is being bound and speaking of Esau. All right, and we're going to prove, all right, that Satan, because we had to prove who the wicked was in 2 Thessalonians 2:8, which is Esau, Edom. Okay, but then we're going to see what energy do these people come in when we go back to Thessalonians. Okay, but you go here to Job 9:24 real quick. All right, and you look at who runs the earth today. Okay, what nation has authority in every part of the earth, man? Has a say so in every part of the earth, man. Esau, Edom. So you read that Job 9:24.
Con, this is Job chapter 9, verse 24. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he?
If not, where and who is he, man? Who else covered up the face of the Messiah and made it to be himself, man? Which we know the Messiah is a dark-skinned man from the tribe of Judah. Okay, but who made the Messiah into his likeness? Who made the Most High into his likeness? Who made the prophets into his likeness, man? There's only one people that did that, and that's a token of who he is, the wicked. All right, in the Bible, all right, ties Esau to the wicked. Now we're going to tie this devil to Satan, okay, to show you that Satan, in the context of Revelation 20, is speaking of Esau, man. So let's go back to 2 Thessalonians, and we'll get verse 9, bro, because it will destroy him. It will consume him with the spirit of his mouth, which is the prophets, and shall destroy him with the brightness of his coming, which is the chariots. Okay, so the Lord raised up the prophets to consume this devil, because lies are being consumed, all right, by truth. Okay, and that's going to be the process until Yahweh physically returns and destroys this devil, man. Okay, but you got it, bro. Verse 9.
Con, this is verse 9. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs of lying wonders.
Yeah, so even him, okay, you know, is a man whose coming is after the working of Satan. His coming is after the working of Satan. So Esau represents Shaitan in the earth, man, the adversary. All right, with all power and signs and lying wonders, man, because this man, he has been able to tap in on the left hand side, you know, and go into, you know, certain technologies that other nations weren't able to go into, because he's tapped into Satan, you know. So he's blessed, you know, by the Most High through Satan on the left hand side. Okay, he's in the fullness of that blessing given to him by Isaac, but he would do it through Satan, through the sword, man. You know, and these powers and signs and lying wonders, man, people are in awe at this man's technology, man. You know, so going here, because you go into this word working. Let's get this word who's working. All right, and what does it say in the Greek?
Strong's G 1753. Energeia. Energeia.
Energeia. All right, which is working efficiency. Okay, and you read in the Strong's, yep, it says efficiency, operation, or energy. Okay, so this man operates in the energy of Satan, Shaitan, the adversary. Okay, they're highly satanic. Okay, so this Satan, you know, that was bound in the bottomless pit. Okay, was speaking of Esau, Edom, man, the wicked. Okay, that's who he was speaking of. You know, so just to prove that in Revelation 20, going back to it. All right, and this 1,000 year represents what they call the Dark Ages. Okay, when Jake, you know, was ruling in Rome, you know, the Roman Empire. Okay, and then Jake, you know, he began ruling in you know, Europe. Okay, the other part of Europe, more Western Europe. You know, the French, the Spanish. Okay, because you had the Moors that was in Spain and Portugal. Okay, yeah, Jake in France. You know, Britain. You know, Ireland. You know, King James was the king of Scotland and Ireland. The British at the same time. You know, coming from the line of stewards. You can look that up dealing with King James. All right, which they pushed that slander like he was a alphabet, which that was a complete lie. Okay, but so you had Jake ruling during these 1,000 years, man. You had, I said Elam had the Parthian Empire. You had Ishmael had their caliphates, and even Moab, had their the Mongolians. So everyone doing their thing, but mainly Jake was, the pinnacle at the time. All right, with the even the czars, what you call the czars of Russia, they was Jake's. Ivan the Terrible. All right, Peter the Great. You go into different czars. Okay, then it was Jake, man. So all this was taking place during this 1,000 years. Okay, and Esau he wasn't able to have any influence in the earth. Okay, so read this verse 3.
God, this is Revelation 20, verse 3. It says, and cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up and set a seal upon him that he should deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years shall be fulfilled. And after that, he must be loosened a little season.
Yeah, so after this 1,000 years, he will be loose, and that's where you have the Renaissance. Okay, that's when you had the Ottoman Turks, which are Edomites. Because the Caucasus Mountains is over there and they're close to their region of Turkey as well. So they mingled themselves in, with the Turks, and they came under the banner as Muslims. Then you had some Edomites come under the banner as Christians, and some of them, went into Judaism. Okay, so these devils, which this is what they do best, take on new identities, reinvent themselves, and and they back on the scene, man. Okay, so you had the Ottoman Turks under Mehmed II take down, all right, the Byzantine Empire. Okay, they took down Constantinople, which there was a Jake stronghold. Then you had under the banner of Christianity, you had uh, the fall of Granada. Okay, to Ferdinand II, King of Aragon, and you had Queen Isabella. Okay, and they took down, the the Moors in Granada. Okay, and after that, Esau began to explore. He was loosed. The Lord loosed him to go conquer and explore with the sword, man. All right, and we got a little video that's going into that because we in that little season now where the devil has been loose, and they call it a little season, compared to our immortal kingdom. This is a little season. These 500 years, the devil, 500 plus years, this devil been on the loose. Okay, and what did he do? Because first he ruled out of Europe, which Europe was known as the bottomless pit because it was bearing the resources. So this slave trade, this is when Europe came up, and then also they established, the colonies in the New World, Central, South, and North America, and eventually they would be built up, man. But it was all off the slavery of Jake. Okay, and those raw minerals, Esau came in power in Europe. He began to scrapulate resources from all parts of the earth, man, because Europe was a bottomless pit. It was bearing the resources. That's why it's the bottomless pit. And we're going to show you. All right, we're going to go into this quick video, and then we got some articles. Okay, a couple things we looked up on Google. But we're going to play this. All right, so this is a quick 2 minute and some change video. It's an introduction to the triangular trade. Okay, because when you go into the transatlantic slave trade, we have to understand you had Jake was the slaves from Africa to America, which they call the Middle Passage, was just one leg, all right, of a three-legged trade between Africa, America, and Europe. Okay, because Europe had manufacturing, but they didn't have raw resources, so they had to get that from other places, man. Okay, and America, all right, at this time became the main place where Europe got a lot of raw resources for their manufacturing, man. Okay, so let's play this.
In the 1400s and the 1500s, more and more Europeans started exploring the world.
And this is the devil being loose. You know, he was able to go explore the world. You know, so this is the devil being loose, man. These Edomites, man, they went under the banner of Europeans, and these were Edomites. All right, and they was loose, and they began to explore the world. And who do they run into? Okay, who do they put hell on?
1400s and the 1500s, more and more Europeans started exploring the world. This resulted in multiple interactions and controversies between them and various groups of people, the most affected ones including the Africans and the Native Americans. Whether the encounters of these peoples were positive or negative, that's for you to decide. Although, without a doubt, the meeting of the Africans, Americans, and Europeans shaped early American history because of the effects made by the Columbian Exchange, the Triangular Trade, and the Middle Passage. The triangular trade, which lasted during the 1400s, leading all the way up to the 1800s, had one of the biggest impacts on all three continents. The triangular trade connected and integrated trade between Europe, the Americas, and Africa. The system allowed all three nations to export and import goods, which in the beginning seemed like a substantial win for all the countries involved in the trade. The country that believed so the most was Africa with its slave trade, possibly having the most significant impact, even greater than the ones between America and Europe and Africa. On the surface of it, it sounds as simple as America sending rum, Africa sending slaves. That's because that was really all it was. America exported large quantities of rum to African leaders, and in compensation, Africa sent slaves to America to do work. Keep in mind, though, a lot of these slaves weren't exactly innocent. Slaves were either angry ravages who had crossed the border, or people who had committed major crimes. Although they weren't exactly innocent, they were definitely not guilty enough to deserve what lied ahead of them in the Middle Passage. Slaves were sent in ships across the Middle Passage to an unknown land where they would spend the rest of their life doing onerous work. This came as a huge advantage for the Europeans in America and greatly helped colonization, farming, and other labor. Apart from Africa, America also had a beneficial trade with Europe. America sent raw goods to Europe, such as sugar, cotton, wood, and tobacco. In return, Europe manufactured some of the goods and sent them back to America. This was important for America to get tools and other resources, which are mandatory for a new country to have a strong start. The other important trade was that between Europe and Africa. Europe sent guns, clothes, iron, beer, and more to Africa, and in return, Africa sent gold, ivory, hardwood, and more to Europe. Although all these trades were very important, the trading between America and Africa was definitely the most important. The relationships that were formed between these two countries in the triangular trade shaped history for the coming centuries. Hey guys, I hope you liked and learned something new from this quick introduction to the triangular trade. If you did, don't forget to like, comment down below, and subscribe to Bite Size Knowledge for more cool educational facts. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so you see, what we call the triangular, slave trade. All right, where Europe, sent guns. All right, beer, tools to Africa. All right, and Africa sent slaves to America, and the slaves, the crops that the slaves was harvesting, you know, were being sent to Europe. Those raw resources was being sent, all right, to Europe. All right, and Europe had the manufacturing, so they can turn those raw resources into guns and tools, and you know, so Europe didn't have anything, man. Even until this day, Europe depends heavily on other countries, for raw minerals, okay, and raw resources, man. You know. So we're gonna matter of fact, let's get that real quick. If you can post it in John 10 and 10 Bible Shah. All right. So yeah, let's put that. So we're gonna show you how much Europe has to depend on the rest of the world just for essentials, man. You got it, bro.
Yeah, the John 10:10 and 10. I put it in there,
Yeah,
bro.
yeah, yeah. You can read that Bible shop.
Come. This is the book of John, chapter 10, verse 10. It said, the thief cometh not, but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. I
Yep. So
come. What?
now Esau, he's that thief, and this is Mo. He's the parasite of the earth, because even when you go to Mount Petra, it was a barren land. See, Israel was plushed and decked out, you know. Even the land that Esau inherited, it was a barren land. It was a mountainous, rocky region. Man, we was decked out. We was plush. We was part of what you call the Fertile Crescent. Okay, you see that the Levant region. All right, but this devil, he even Mount Petra was, you know, mountainous and barren. All right, but you got it, bro.
Come. It says, I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly.
They might have it more abundantly, and that's what Yahweh Shai is going to bring. Because right now we're under the rule of the thief, but under Yahweh Shai, we're going to experience what abundance is, man. We're going to have resources, you know. So when you go to these different countries, so raw resources Europe get from Africa. It says Europe historically extracted a wide array of raw resources from Africa, including agricultural products like cotton, cacao, and rubber, as well as minerals like gold, diamonds, and copper to fuel their industrial economies. Because uh, Europe had the first industrial boom, over there mainly in Britain. You had the industrial boom with these factories and particular things, and that's when you had the big push to get Jake off the plantation and put him into the industry. See, the elites are forward thinkers, and they knew that the industrial was going to be the way of the future. Okay, so they push the emancipation through um Abraham Lincoln. All right, Abraham Lincoln. All right, didn't care about niggas, man. Okay, the elites was behind the whole emancipation, which emancipation goes to transfer. So you have the industrial boom in the North, all right, because the North didn't have the climate to grow the crops that was in the South, because most of that tobacco, cotton, all right, rice, all those things came from the South. Those cash crops that was going to Europe, most of that came from the South.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but when you had uh, Europe have their industrial boom, well, the northern states, they mimic Europe, and that's why they took all the labor from the South and put it in the North. Okay, it wasn't because they felt sorry for niggas. They're just the way of the future, man, for the elites. All right, and it says to fuel their industrial economies. Beyond these, they also sought commodities like ivory and spices, particularly pepper. So you just go into all these resources that they get from Africa. It's cotton, cacao, rubber, all right, tea and coffee, vegetable oils, um, ground nuts, sugar, sisal. You go to mineral resources, they get gold, diamond, copper, iron ore, cobalt, manganese, platinum, lithium, other minerals, a variety of other minerals were also extracted, including bauxite, aluminum, uranium, all right, which is used in nuclear power. Then other resources you have ivory, used for decorative wood, spices. Okay, because even in those cathedrals, those big cathedrals that you see in Europe, they're decked out. A lot of those resources came from when they came over here and took over. All right, the Northern Kingdom. A lot of their gold, came from South and Central America. A lot of it came from the Incas. Okay, I believe the Incas gave the Inca king, Inca chief. All right, they gave the conquistadors enough gold to fill, a room. Right? I forgot the size of the room, but it was enough gold, to fill a room. And they took a lot of that over there to build, all right, the infrastructure of those monarchs. So
Come.
Europe has a kind of wealth that they stored bestowed throughout the earth. You finna say something, bro?
Come, bro. If I may add, Baba Kasha, it's called the Cullinan Diamond. I think that's the significant part of even the crown that the lady wears over there today. That diamond itself, it was named after the mining company that found it. But that diamond, that big diamond, that's a significant part of that crown, actually was found in South Africa.
Damn. What's the name of that diamond?
It's called the Cullinan Cullinanan diamond because they named it after the mining company.
Damn.
So it's
So
called
you
Cullinan diamond.
come,
See if I can put it in the chat real quick. Hold on.
come. So you go here. Yeah, if you can find it, we try to pull it up, bro. But you go here. Now this is what Europe, all right, raw resources they get from India. Because the British, you know, they took down India as well. You know, they colonized India. You know, they colonized South Africa, and British you played a major part in colonizing China. Okay, because British was, you know, the pretty much the empire. Okay, before America. You see, it said Europe, particularly Britain, gained access to various raw resources from India, including spices, silk, cotton, dyes, salt, peter, and tea. It says these resources were crucial for European industry and trade, driving European colonization and exploitation of India's natural wealth. Man, the thief coming not but to steal, kill, and destroy. Okay, it says spices like pepper, cardamom, and cinnamon were highly valued in Europe and were a major driver for European exploration and colonization in India. It says silk. It says India was a major producer of silk, which was high in demand in Europe for clothing and textile. All right. And you go into dyes. It says India was a source of natural dyes such as indigo, which was used in dyeing fabrics. It says tea was introduced to Europe from India and became a popular beverage. You know, because you think of Tea Party, you know, you think of the British and those tea parties, by those monarchs and nobles. But all those things had to be imported, you know, and this is why the British, at one time had the biggest empire, that the earth ever seen because they colonized so many places, so they would have access to those resources because they didn't have any, man. The British were a big parasite, okay, in the earth, man. Okay, now you go to I think it's one more.
I put it in there like that, bro. You just had to type in the Cullinan Diamond British Crown because
Come,
it had like a long. I had to retract the message because it was so long.
okay, come on. So I'm gonna pull this one up. Pull two more up. Then we'll see if we can get that one. All right. So you go here, and it says China, and this is even today, is a major supplier of raw materials to Europe, particularly critical raw materials like rare earths, gallium, and germanium. These materials are crucial for industries like solar and wind energy and electrical devices. The EU also relies heavily on China for other raw materials, including magnesium, natural graphite, and tungsten. You know, so it just shows you because I want to get one more. All right, that Europe, can't even be self sufficient. That's why I was known as the bottomless pit. Now, when you go into what resources these niggas push out, okay, so see what resources does Europe export? It says Europe primarily exports manufactured goods and some raw materials. See, Europe, all they can do is bring in raw resources and manufacturing. Okay, you see, that's why they can only export only manufactured good. That's the finished product, and it's going to go into it. It said what they focus on finished products like machinery, vehicles, and chemicals, and goddamn chemicals, man. While Europe imports, all right, while Europe imports more raw materials than it export, it does export some, including those crucial for green transition, digitalization, and other key sectors, man. So it really don't even go into what they export, you know. So, but it tells you that what the only thing that they do mainly export is manufactured goods, and that's the finished product from the raw materials that they get from everyone else, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So, um, uh, let me see. Let's go here. What you let me see what it say. It's called
Type in the Cullinan,
color,
Cullinanan.
color the diamond bridge crown. Let's see the color diamond order. Okay, yeah, let's pull it up. Let me see. Yeah, so you go into. I just asked it where did the Cullinan diamond come from. It said the Cullinan diamond was found at the premier mine located in South Africa. All right, near the town of Cullinan, in 40 kilometers east of Pretoria. It was discovered in January 25th or 26th, 1905 by mine superintendent Frederick Wells. You know, so like you say, even that diamond, comes from a town in South Africa called Cullinan, Africa, man. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so Europe opposes itself by the resources of the world. You know, that's why it's known. That's why it was known as the bottomless pit, man.
Mm-hmm.
Ain't no middle, ain't nothing there. You see. So
Pretoria is the capital of South Africa, modern today.
okay, bro, bro. So yeah, uh, matter of fact, I want to get that. I think that's in Job. Let me see. Might be 20 or 21. Let me see. We get ready to close out on it. But when you go to, okay, yep, this is it. And this is for these European, these Americans, these Edomites, everywhere. Well, let me share this real quick. Uh, so yeah, we ended here in Job, bro.
Come.
So yeah, we just ended here with Job 2015. You got it, bro.
Come. This is the book of Job, chapter 20, and verse 15. He have swallowed down riches, and he shall vomit them up again. The Most High shall cast them out of his belly.
Yeah, so the devil, has extrapolated, so many resources and all right, and things unto himself. Okay, but he's finna get ready to vomit those things up. All right, his empire is going to be destroyed. He goes into captivity, man. Everything that he has, you know, collected, everything that he has swallowed down. Okay, in his rulership, he's finna get ready to give it all up, man. You know, so all the true wealth that these Edomites have is finna be transferred unto Jacob, man. And that's part of the transition of power, is the transition of wealth, man. So the true riches that this devil got, all right, is going to be transferred to Jacob. That's part of the end of his age and the beginning of ours, man. So yeah, we just want to go into that, just go into that bottomless pit, like I said, which we know, Christianity made so many, false teachings on it. And you even have bugged out Israelites that still teaching madness when it comes to the bottomless pit. But that's what it's speaking of Europe, all right, a land, all right, with no resources. Okay. So this devil was loose, it was able to from that bottomless pit and to go and get the fatness of the earth, the blessing that was given to him by Isaac through the sword. But as Lord said, he shall build, but he's going to throw down again. So we're in the midst of the devil being thrown down again, you know. So, Lord will you brothers, all right, and you sisters edified. Till next time, we'll say Shalom, Kwam Yashala, Abba, soon Shalom.
Shalom.